What's up, everyone? Welcome. This is the Art of Game Mastery's Finding Paths stream, where we talk about all things Pathfinder 2e and sometimes some other stuff. I'm your host, John. This is my co-host, Jack.
Hi
And
guys.
today we're going to be talking about another topic that we posted in Reddit, um, and that is problem players. And we got a number of really good responses in there as well as we did last time. So I think this might be more of a consistent thing we do here, as it seems to be working for us. So, um, Jack, have you had any major problem players in your games?
Um, there's going to be one in every game.
I guess we should probably
Recently with
start by saying that problem players to one GM might not be a problem players to other. Every GM kind of has their type of player they mesh with. Um, there's obviously some things that are pretty universally bad for a player to do, or traits to have. But keep in mind that one thing that's bad to one GM might not necessarily be a problem for another GM. So finding a game that you fit with as a player is very important. But yeah, that out of the way. What were you saying, Jack?
there's going to be one in every game, and the problem player can range from someone you don't mesh or meld with, and it can be someone who is just abject, doesn't mesh or meld with the rest of the party in general. It can be sometimes that problem player is your best friend, and
Yeah.
your people that you bring to the table don't vibe well with them. And before we get into talking about all the things that these problem players can do, as usual, talk to your players. John, you're a big advocate of having a session zero. You usually mention that these kind of things can be ironed out proper session zero.
Yep.
Sometimes
Or at least mitigated.
Yeah, it can greatly be reduced. Sometimes you're introducing a new character into a game and with a group that is already established, and the person might seem like a problem player, but it could be your group is kind of a clique.
Yeah, that's something that was actually brought up on Reddit. Is sometimes it's not the player themselves that's the problem. It's the rest of the group that's a problem or not a good fit for that player, and that can kind of get wishy-washy and hard to discern sometimes.
So, I guess we're ready to dive right into the.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these
problem players.
comments we got on Reddit. I guess start off here. Power gamers were a big one mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know if I personally consider power gaming to be a problem player. I don't necessarily enjoy that kind of player in my game, but I don't think it's something that's detrimental to the game. And in my experience, at least, I haven't had too many problem players in my games, but power gaming is something that, if it does come up, can usually be addressed by just talking to the person, and people are generally receptive to that feedback. At least in my experience, I know that some people haven't been so lucky. What about you, Jack? Have you had problems with power gaming in your games?
Yes, I have some caveats to that.
Go ahead.
So, I don't think that power gaming is bad. When you have a problem player and the problem is power gaming, there's usually a stipulation or caveat to that. And the problem is the player is so focused on power gaming that they're either subtracting the experience from other players or they're derailing their game. And derailing the game, I don't mean to say that they're breaking the game. Sometimes players come up with combos and they might succeed on certain encounters, or they. But the problem with the power gamer, this mentality of when it becomes a problem, is when they make other players kind of just toss their dice down, like, okay, why am I playing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when the power gamer starts to tell the other players how they should be playing because they're not playing like as optimized as they should be. I guess is when it becomes a real issue. That's when it goes from a game problem to a person problem, right? And I think the person problem is the things that we want to try to prevent in our games.
So we're going to try to, as the GMs, we're going to try to iron out some of these issues, how to address them, tackle them head on. And I think that sometimes it's really good to let other players know who are the most complaining or who are pining about how there's this one person is a total munchkin or a power gamer, is to be like, yes, but they're a strong role player as well. And if
Right.
you're a power gamer and you're a role player, power to you. You're playing the game and you're having fun. If you're power gaming and everyone else isn't having fun, kind of remind your other players, if you don't think it's a problem, remind your players that, hey, they are contributing in in other methods, in
Right.
role play. They they don't shy away from social interactions. There's a lot of other things that a power gamer can bring to the table, like whether it's keeping track of loot or keeping track of map making. Every party has that kind of dynamic, and sometimes I think we get a little swept away by this whole, oh, they're power gaming.
Yeah, and like you said, there's things where power gamers do excel at as well, and as long as it's not becoming a personal issue with the other players, I don't think it's that much of a deal. Let them keep doing their thing, even when they're like breaking the game, as you put it. Um, Generally, those like combos and things they come up with are fairly niche, and as a GM, you can kind of create encounters where that kind of combo wouldn't be that relevant or useful. Like you can kind of
Literally.
steer the game in a way that kind of mitigates.
Give them their
that
chance
mess.
to shine with their power combo. Let them ooh and ah with their power combo, and then yeah, it's a one trick pony because they're not going to try to pull that off again. If they do, in game word gets around that they do this, and there should be wanted posters, posted up saying, what their secret weapon is. The bad guys are
Exactly.
going to get wind of it. Someone's going to survive. News is going to spread. Your combo is going to get out, and you're thinking you're designing a character. You want to have this superpower combo that's going to work in every situation. It is only going to work in one combat. The novelty is going to wear off. Your other players are going to be like, yeah, that is a cool combo. Don't do it again.
Yeah.
That's how your players are probably going to look at you like, hey, I see you taking all that limelight, and that was cool, but like, let us have a chance to play too.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it's a game, right? And everyone's here to have fun. So as long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. But also, you don't want to detract from other people's fun as well, and that includes the GM. So as long as you're not stepping on other people's fun when you're having your fun, to me, it's a non-issue. Another one that was pretty popular was arguing with the GM, and I don't think this was so much as like rules lawyering and more like disagreeing with how the GM was running the game kind of deal and
Those
being
are two
adamant.
completely different issues.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think rules lawyering is that big of a deal. I actually didn't see that one brought up in the Reddit, which actually surprised me. Just kind
I
of like
think
it's kind of a
the
treat
Reddit I
that players
posted in,
get. That
though,
was
the
that?
Reddit I posted in was Pathfinder, and there's I think overall, I'm gonna make a generalization, so crucify me in the comments if you will. The Pathfinder has a lot of rules,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't seen a problem with rule lawyering in Pathfinder Second Edition because we're all just trying to keep each other accountable. The game's been out for 2-3 years now,
Yeah. Something like that.
whereas the Fifth Edition has been out for since 2014. Wouldn't you just look
2014.
that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like people there's still a bit of a novelty going on, and we're still learning the rules as is. Just last session we were talking about what was the affliction, stupefy,
Um.
and neither of us
forget.
could remember off the top of our head while we're playing, like, when does it resolve, and it then resolves at the end of their turn.
Yeah.
Before it diminishes, and neither of us could remember, and we were just like, let's just make a ruling and keep going.
Yeah.
And then somebody else wants to look up the rules and let us know. Cool.
Yeah, I think
don't
that
really
particular
consider-
case I actually read it and misunderstood it again before we actually got it right.
There's a lot to the rules, and they're confusing. And so I think if I had posted the same question, I did. I just nobody in Fifth Edition responds.
It's
If
a
I
shame.
had posted this question in Fifth Edition and people had brought up rules lawyering, I noticed there was way more rules lawyering problems in Fifth Edition than I have. Maybe I'm biased personally in Pathfinder Second Edition, just because I don't know, the rules seem much clearer and there's less of them in 5th edition. So I think rules learning is even more annoying because of that.
Well, I would say 5th edition rules are very unclear, even though there's less of them. There's so much hand waviness in the rules in 5th edition. And that's actually one of the major gripes a lot of 5e GMs have with 5e is that there's oftentimes not an answer to a problem they're having, and they're left just to make something up on the spot, which can be a pain in the ass for the GM.
Which is like my style. I would prefer it. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe that's why I didn't notice it as a problem. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, there's no rule for covering it. Guess who gets to make the decision? GM. Hey, it's not that confusing. I absolutely love that.
But yeah, in this
Yeah.
particular case, I think a lot of them were talking about arguing with the GM's style, and maybe the game that they're playing was not what they expected the game to be. Like maybe they were expecting a more, I don't know, as an example, like a mystery game or something, and they were getting a dungeon crawl or something like that. You know what I mean? So they build a character. I think that's another case where being around in session 0 can help alleviate those concerns. I think another problem with that though is that there's only one session 0, and there might be players coming into the game later.
Yes.
So as a GM, it's kind of your job to
Post-operation checkup.
and
You gotta do
make sure that when a new player comes on, you give them all the information. You kind of have like a mini session 0 with them, maybe not necessarily like in person, but just in Discord or something, and give them a rundown of all the decisions you guys made in session 0, all the lay of the land, what are the rules, stuff like that. Make sure that they're all on board before they start playing.
I don't know how you run your long-term campaigns, but if you go onto our Roll20 site, you'll see like a list of accolades that the party has accomplished,
Mhm.
and then like major NPCs and the current player lineup roster. That way, whenever we went to go recruit somebody in LFG, there was that bit of information if the player wanted to read it, and then I would personally go over with the person to make sure at a personable level that we would get along, and then after that soft interview, you introduce them to the rest of the crew and see how they go through. Hopefully, within a week before your next session happens. And I feel like sometimes a post-op check is kind of maybe it's something we should cover in the future. I feel like I don't know if you've noticed in my games before Pathfinder had their retrain the feat rules, which best ruling ever. I had always said if you choose a feat and you do not use it in a session, at the end of the session you didn't even use it at all, and you'd be like, hey, I didn't like this feat. 100% retrain it. No penalties whatsoever.
Yeah.
No questions asked. You didn't even use it at all in that game.
I definitely, at least for the first couple levels, like retraining aside, I definitely let players change up their characters however they see fit, because you don't always know,
You know what kind of game
the
you're
clearest
getting
vision
into.
at the beginning.
And if you made a barbarian with a giant axe and you were ready to rage and smash, and suddenly you find yourself at a ballroom and you are not able to get some trade routes for your city because you're trying to raise profits, you're suddenly be like, wait, I am in the wrong role for this. You need to be able to have that option to be like, hey GM, tag out. I need to swap out another player. I need to start fresh with this character because I got the wrong idea.
I will even allow people to swap out entire characters if it's really a big issue for them. Like if they're playing a character and it's like, I'm not really feeling this. How it's not playing out how I imagined it, then I'll let them just come up with a reason why that character went away and then introduce a new one. That can happen at any point in the game for me. I don't have a strong preference there. As terms of like the lay of the land and the rules, so I haven't quite done this in any of my online games yet, but I probably should start to. But when I would do like in-person games, I would always have a print-off sheet of everything, like a campaign document that just gives like, here's the rules after everything in session 0 we came up with. Here's the world. I call it a campaign handout is what I call it. But basically, it's sometimes multiple pages, but it has like some general lore of the world, if it's a homebrew world, which usually is for me. What classes, what ancestries are allowed, any rules that are changed, things like that. And then I bring that to session 0, we discuss the stuff, make any necessary adjustments, and then I give, or either let them in person. It's nice because I can just cross it out and write something above it, and that's how they do it. But yeah, in my digital games, I haven't really done that much. So it's something I should probably start looking into facilities of doing. But I do like that way. If I have that handout at the end, and I can give it to new players as they come on board, it's got everything we discussed in session 0 at their fingertips, basically.
Handout is going to be a wealth of information that the player can look back on and source for later.
Yeah. I noticed not too many games do the handout approach. At least the online games. It was much more common in person, in my experience at least. So it'd be interesting to see if those ever make their way as like a general staple thing in digital games as well. Let's see, what else do we have here?
So I noticed that a lot of it was player attention. So this has evolved into being a two-headed dragon problem because, due to the climate, people are playing online. And whereas before I used to hear nonstop complaints, this isn't the first time I've talked about problem players, and neither hasn't been your first time, I'm sure, either, is that people were on their phones.
Yeah.
And people were reading the book, or they were socializing the side conversations. But now with online gaming, attention, like I had argued before that I have better attention on Roll20 or Foundry than I ever did in person. I don't know why. I feel like maybe because we're using a platform like Discord where only one person can talk at a time, and so the side conversations, end up being in the chat. It's quiet, but everybody can still kind of see it. I felt like I had the best attention span out of my players ever. And a lot of people complain that people who are on their computers are just alt tabbing. They're not even watching the game. They're reading an article, they are playing another video game or something else. And
the playing another video game thing is fascinating to me. I have never experienced that, but it seems to be like something that actually happens.
I can't believe how many different people mentioned that people aren't paying attention in their games.
I'm definitely guilty of like looking up rules and stuff when like Archives of Nethys big game. And I also noticed that in digital games, one downside to them is that I feel like people are more likely to try to talk over other people. So you get a lot of people like trying to talk at the same time and get their point across. And as the person who's trying to hear one of these people or both, it can be difficult to really get the information you need. Whereas in person, I feel like since you're right next to that person, I feel like you're less likely to try to talk over them unless you're being like, you're angry or something and you're trying to like make a valid point. But yeah, it's definitely changed in dynamics a bit. I don't know. I mean, I think especially if you're in a larger game with like a lot of people and you're in like a combat in Pathfinder 2e is very intricate. Like there's a lot you can do, there's a lot you can plan for. So I feel like if you're in like a game with 6 or 7 people and you're in a big battle and there's people are trying to plan their moves and things are changing all the time and people are taking their time on their turns, it can get kind of hard to keep your focus on the game when it's not your turn. But
this is where I kind of like
I don't necessarily see that's a problem because they're not detracting from the game, right? I think it becomes an issue if it comes around to their turn, like, what? Like, what was the last, like, 5 things that happened,
Literally, that's what the people were saying in the comments, was that I don't think that your attention being elsewhere is really that big of a deal. If it's not your turn and you're doing something else, that's fine.
Yeah.
And if it comes to your turn and you don't know what's going on because you're looking at something else, that's a one time you can correct that behavior.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think that I'm coming away from this video saying that you must solely, pay attention just to the game.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with looking up something in the book, making sure your rules are good, double checking, whatever it is that you're doing when it's not your turn.
The reality is most games...
You should be paying attention to when it's coming up to your turn, and you should know what you want to do on your round when it comes around.
Yeah. the reality is most games take place between 2 and 4 hours, and that's a long time for someone to focus on one thing. So it's understandable for me if somebody drifts off from here and there, but just try not to let it detract from the game from the rest of the group. Don't like go off in your own world for like an hour and then come back and expect them to give you a lowdown of everything that just happened in that past hour. Like that's when it becomes a big issue, I think. Um, I think one thing you and I are both guilty of not doing this as much. I think one thing that could help is playing for like an hour or two, taking a break, and then coming back and reconvening after like an hour or two.
I missed that in person when we were at the tavern. You know, our food would come out. There was another round of beers to be had,
Yeah.
and we kind of, there was space in between the attention breaks.
Yeah.
I know, like my old group, when I made dinner and we would all take a break. There was usually like a time to clear the dishes away, do some things. Everybody needs bathroom breaks in
Yeah.
the middle of that, and then get back to the game. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
We're getting old, and we don't play games 8 hours straight like we did when we
Yeah.
were kids.
Yeah, so the whole break thing is something I want to start reintroducing to my online games. It's something I did in my in-person games and never just one of those things that never got brought over to the digital world.
That's the point. We should have intermissions,
Yeah.
scheduled intermissions.
Exactly, yeah.
With the understanding of like,
I think
hey,
Pathfinder 2 is actually they actually have some spots in like when they mention you should give it a hero point every hour to your players. I don't do that. You don't do that. But those are good points where you might want to consider having like a break. Just every hour, have a break, come back, give them a hero point if that's your shtick. Anyway, there's things like that you can do to help mitigate the attention problem. But some people are just really not into the game and they're not willing to or not wanting to play. They're just there because they feel like they have to, and that's when it becomes an issue. So talk to your players. One person actually brought up an awesome point that a lot of things can, be handled by just talking to the offending player and sitting them down, explaining what the issue is and why it's an issue, and hash it out. Like I don't want to speak for everyone. There's probably some children in the ranks, but most of us are adults, and I feel like as adults we have certain social obligations, and hashing out problems with people and talking about them and not just getting angry and frustrated is one of those things. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. But...
Yeah. So with attention span, some of the easy fixes, like you said about talking to them, having intermission breaks. Some things can't necessarily be fixed with attention span. If you've reached the point where it doesn't seem like the player is having fun, you need to talk to your player about that. If you're a player and you're going into the game and you're not having fun, it's time to talk to your GM. If you've already talked to your GM a few times, then maybe it's time to take a break.
Yeah. Another one I saw in here was see if I get this right. One of the players going back to how the player expected a game to be a certain way, and then he got mad at the GM because in his mind it was the GM's responsibility to.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. That was hilarious. The guy was
like the GM's responsibility to cater to their whims or something like that. And while I do think the GM and the player should collaborate on how the game is playing, and if one side is feeling something's not right, the other side should be willing to adjust a bit to compensate. I don't think that the GM's role is just to cater to the player's every whim, especially when it's only one player who seems to be having the issue and everyone else is perfectly happy. Like, I brought up to you one time, I brought up that I wasn't super enthused with the way the maps were working and stuff in our game, and I seemed to be the only person having that problem, so I voiced my concerns and said, well, if no one else is having that issue, then whatever, it's not that big of a deal.
And I mean, luckily for you, that issue was a bit easier to fix. With the scaling of the maps.
Yeah.
I think there's you haven't had that issue yet.
Yeah, but I think that that's a. I've heard that idea that the GM is supposed to be making, like, catering to the players' whims a lot. And I wonder where that came from.
I don't know where that came from because this is if it wasn't for this Reddit post, I would have never heard. I've
I've
never
heard
heard an
it in
example.
other like brought up in other like posts on like the Pathfinder 2e and D&D subreddits where people are complaining about games that
Sounds
have
so
died or
entitled.
sessions that have that went bad or something. And
I mean, just think about how entitled you have to be to
yeah,
think that it's somebody else's job to imaginally craft the world around
like
you
the GM's
and put
already
all the
putting
time and
so
energy.
much work into this game. Like, cut them some slack, you know. And they're a player just as much as you are. They might have a slightly different role, but they're still there to have fun. They're not there to, you know, they're not your teacher, your something like that. They're there to play a game, and they stepped
Yeah,
up and took on the monumentous task of game mastering it. Like,
it,
it
here's some
just
psychology to throw at you. That player, if you have a player says stuff like that, they're not at your game table to have fun. They are there to extort the social contract by getting exchange of power from other people. Um, so if you're cheating on your roles, you are doing that to give yourself a sense of power. And if you're telling other players how to play, this kind of player, apparently that player had all. I mean, that one guy who wanted him to craft the world around him, he had a whole list of issues.
yeah. I
Racial
think
slurs,
that's actually a good
ice.
point. Is that a lot of people that historically, I guess, were into this hobby were typically you're people who weren't the best, you know, at social interactions. And I think that that's changing nowadays as the hobby goes more mainstream. But I think there's still a lot of people who don't have a lot of social experience, at least in the real world, and tend to be a bit socially inept. And that can be a problem
It
when
to be an exercise for those
it
social
can be. It
interactions.
should be an exercise, yes.
If you don't have any social experience, these games are a great way to break that ice
Yeah,
and build up on your social experience. The problem is you're going to run into people who think who don't see it as an exercise. They're not going to change,
right.
and they think that they're good at the social exchange, and
Exactly.
that's where we get the problem players.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know. I think that that's more often where these problems stem from, are those kind of people who just don't really necessarily realize they're being a problem player. They think that they're just you know, normal, they're just playing the game like it should be played, or they're acting normally. But they just don't have that social experience to realize or to recognize that they're making the game awkward or unfun for other people. But I think for me though, like I said, I haven't had too many problem players in my game. I'm trying to
You
think
got
of
lucky.
what was that?
You got lucky. You got
Yeah,
lucky, John. You got lucky.
yeah. I think I'm
We've
trying to
had
think of
some.
one, at least one that I've had in the past. Um, I'm actually blanking right now. I can't think of any that were like so bad where I don't think I've ever had to kick anyone off the table. There
Do you
actually
remember
there
that one
was
time
one
when I
there was one in a 5e game where we had a group of friends of mine. It was me and a group of friends, and then it was a new group of friends. So I like just recently met these people, so I still hadn't met like all of their friends as well. And at one point, I met one of their brothers, who was an awesome guy. Like, I loved hanging out with him. But he had played GURPS in the past, so I'm like, oh yeah, come join us for this 5e game. You know, it'll be great. Um, he was not there, like, he didn't live at that house with like some of these other people, so there was like he was only there like every few sessions, whatever. So we just kind of brought him in when he could make it. So we made him a character. He was a paladin, but it became very apparent very early that he was less interested in playing it as a role playing game, like seriously, than and more interested in like doing funny things, or doing joking things. So like there was one point, I don't remember what they were actually attempting to do, but at one point he like cast like fireball or something at what's the fireball? It's a wizard spell. He casts some major spell at a giant ship in the shipyard and like burnt down the ship and killed like tons of people, NPCs, and I had to do a trial for him. And he's like derailed the entire game for like 3 sessions.
So
and then he just disappeared after that.
Murder Hobo hasn't come up yet.
What was that?
We've gotten like halfway through this and we haven't even talked about murder hobos. That wasn't even like mentioned once.
Yeah.
Your guy sounds like a total murder hobo.
Definitely. And I don't know if he was necessarily a murder hobo. It was more just like he was just there to bring chaos.
In that shipwreck?
He was just his goal wasn't necessarily just to kill. His goal was just to wreak havoc in the world and just cause funny and interesting. So it derailed the game, and he ended up like disappearing for like several weeks after that happened. So it was like it was painful for me as the GM. I don't really know how the other players felt. He never really returned to the game after that. I think he got the vibe that his way of playing wasn't really meshing well with us. I still hung out with the guy all the time out of the game. He's awesome, like I said, awesome dude. But sometimes the player just doesn't mesh with the table, and that's, I got lucky in that he recognized it himself and didn't really make a big shtick out of it. But some people aren't that lucky and have to have the hard conversations with them. And when they are friends, that can be... So actually, something that's mentioned, I find that when they're friends, it's harder to have that conversation. But it seemed like a couple people actually found it easier to have the conversation when they're friends than if they're randos. Which, for me, if someone's a rando and I don't like them, they can go fuck themselves. But, yeah, I mean, that was an interesting point to me. But yeah, murder hobos wreaking havoc in the world, that's a big one that I find. That's probably the worst offender to me, unless it's a game where that's planned and expected. Like, evil campaigns are a thing. And even in evil campaigns, you're not necessarily going around just killing everyone. So it's like, but there are games where you just want to just screw about and wreak havoc, and maybe that's fine for your table, but it wasn't for us.
There's a time and a place for a game that is pure shenanigans, and there's a time and a place for a game that has shenanigans once in a while, and there's some games, grim dark, where we don't want to lighten up the mood. The point of the game is to be dark. Yeah. So there is a time and place to wreak havoc, and you've got to talk to your players ahead of time about this, and make sure everybody is on board with it. I have, as a GM, felt that I had a player come in and roll shenanigans, and I wasn't okay with it as the GM. But everybody else playing at the table absolutely loved it. They win because eventually I slowly changed my mindset to like, okay, I like the shenanigans. The shenanigans are, everybody is melding well with it. Players, if your players keep coming back every session, you are doing something right as a GM. Pat yourself on the back for that. My players kept coming back, keep having fun, and I was the only one not, because, I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
So, as a GM, sometimes you gotta be flexible. When you introduce a new character, a new player to your game, you might have in your hands a problem player, but really it's just getting used to them.
Mm-hmm.
They might make the game more serious. They might take it way more serious than you're accustomed to. They might have the exact opposite opinion.
Yeah. And again, these are the kind of things you should hash out in a session 0. Like, what kind of game are your players expecting to play? What kind of game are you expecting to game master? And make sure that you are on the same page there, because that's perhaps one of the most fundamental aspects of the game is, the overall feel of the game. And I know we keep going back to the idea of session 0, but I really can't stress enough how important that is. I did a GM's Basic episode on session 0, but we should really do a stream sometime on what we go into ourselves in our session 0s. Jack, I don't know. Do you have a session? You had a session 0 for Tagasea, right?
For what?
For Tagasea? You had a session 0, didn't you? I think it was in person, though, because I think it was back when...
That was so long ago, I forget, but I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
We kind of had... Okay, so we had a soft session 0 ahead of time from our previous players, where we said, we're in 5th edition, we're transitioning over to 2E. Mm-hmm. So there was a pre-session 0 about how do we feel about playing Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Then there was like a let's build characters, let's introduce you guys to the because I had a handout for Tagasia. There was the class of fusions page,
Mhm.
like it was like 10 pages long. Sorry guys, it's a lot, a lot to take in. It was only like a couple pages dedicated to just like explaining the stuff. Everything else was just like some of the changes to the rules.
Yeah, you have like
Extra-
custom classes and stuff in there too.
Right, because when I created Tagasia, there wasn't lizard folk.
Yeah,
That's a crime. There wasn't Catfolk yet, which is also a crime. But Paizo wasn't at all like Wizards of the Coast we were expecting. They had lizard folk out by the time I think we were playing the game.
yeah. And Catfolk came out shortly after we started, if I recall.
Right. So I made those extra races thinking it was going to be a long time before they released something,
Yeah.
and they were just like, oof, delivered. So,
Yeah.
but somebody in the Reddit said, to give them a shout out. That was Axe for Hire. They mentioned that right off the bat that having a really good session 0 would reduce almost all of your problems.
Yeah.
It literally pulling out the social contract, and having stability at the table. Those things can go such a long way. And surprised we haven't even talked about social contract. That's probably one of the best remedies for having problem players.
Hmm.
One of the things I didn't discuss is that my old game that I left apparently has continued on playing. My old group, they're playing 5th edition, and they ran into a problem, and they were kind of like messaging me, asking me to mediate, which is, kind of unexpected because I didn't
Yeah,
even know they
it's
were
random.
still going. But it's nice to know that you're in a neutral position and you can kind of help these players talk about these things. And one of the things the players talked about was that a person was an in-game character was dying, and another player had decided they wanted to off them. And I was like, that's kind of PvP. The player hasn't died yet. Give them a chance to make their death saving throws. And when I had mentioned that, like, all of the opinions kind of switched on. They were like, oh, yeah, you're totally breaching, like, social contract in this situation. And sometimes addressing the social contract can kind of help snap people to reality and realize, like, hey, y'all, we are supposed to get along. We're supposed to play this game collectively and collaboratively. Maybe we should stop trying to kill each other or steal loot from each other.
Yeah. The stealing from other people or other party members is one that I have experienced that in a game, but it was from a group of people who have never played any tabletop RPGs before, and they came in with their general video game predispositions and assumed that was like something you did in tabletop RPGs. And we didn't. This was like a one shot, so we didn't have a session 0. We just hopped in. I was explaining the rules as we went. I made pre-gen characters for them. Like, it was partially on me because I never addressed the social contract of role-playing games, so they had no idea. And that group of people was more, for the most part, since they were all like had never played before, they weren't taking it super seriously to begin with, except one person. One person was in my other game, so he knew it was up. But they were having fun with it, so I just went with it. The person who did have a bit of slight PvP with another one and unwillingly was not exactly super enthused about it, and I talked to her afterwards and explained that, look, I mean, everyone was new. I failed my job of explaining the social contracts. You expected things to go a certain way. They expected things to go a different way. But you didn't really pipe up, so I wasn't aware that you were not super happy about it, or I would have addressed it on the spot. So it's like, I apologize. That's about the best I could do in that situation, and it's not like we were playing as that group again for any time soon. So, I say, hey, take it as.
We do live in a high-tech society where we can text each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like what with being able to private message on Discord and online, and all the different methods of communication, it's so funny how we don't.
Yeah.
It's so funny how we just.
I mean, even if you're in the game and it's an in-person game and you're not happy with the way something's going down, just pipe up. Let the GM know. They may know. They may be able to catch your vibe if your aura is releasing that information. But Sometimes
all
we,
around
we
you.
miss it. There's like all kind. As a GM, we're having to watch for all kinds of stuff, think about all kinds of stuff. We're preoccupied with a lot of stuff, so it's very easy
That's right.
for us to miss it if somebody's having ill feelings about a particular event or situation. So if you're in that situation as a player, pipe up, make sure the GM knows, even if you think it's redundant. Um, and they may address it on the spot. They may sit you down after the game and really ask you to elaborate on the issue. And um, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to be handled, but don't just like sit back and bite your tongue. You know, like let it be known that you're not happy with what's going on. I wish
Remember,
texting was a
to send
sending
a
troll
message is a
technology.
cantrip in Pathfinder.
I don't know. I would love to have like carrier pigeon, personal carrier pigeon, so we could just send it back and forth. It'd be fun.
Right on. So another issue with problem players, people showing up. I noticed that was something big to harp on. We see a lot of memes about. I think you saw the. Did I post the? Or did I think somebody else posted?
I don't know. So many memes go through that channel that
There's so many
don't
memes.
see
This
them
one
all.
might jog your memory. It's the Dragon Ball Z meme, where the guy wishes for something kind of like extreme, and then the dragon's like, "Yeah, that's way too much." And then they're like, "Actually, how about you make all my players' schedules line up so that everybody can show up for?"
I haven't
a game
seen that one. That sounds like an
And it's like,
meme.
I love that.
I mean, I'm guilty of this in your game as well. I'm super busy IRL, and sometimes I'm just super burnt out and don't have the social energy to do a game. Um, and I do apologize for that, when that happens. But um,
I'm thinking.
yeah, but I mean,
I know some people personalities. I can kind of draw energy from social interactions. I
Mhm.
just don't like going to social interactions. Like, I'll go, but I'll be fashionably late.
Yeah,
I don't want to go out, but when they finally do get me out, I'm gonna have a good time.
yeah. So like, I think some people have issues getting like a lot of their group together at any time and like having enough players to even play a session, which is uh, I mean, I know that's why you like bigger groups, because that way you can kind of, if one or two people can't make it, you at least still have enough people to play the game. Um,
So the problem player isn't about somebody who, like John, who has a life, and it's a good thing that you have things going on in your life. It's good for you to move on in society.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having personal things going on, family troubles. Your in-laws show up. Like, that's not a problem. Problem player. This is where it comes to the. Oh yeah, last minute. Nothing. No call, no show.
yeah.
The
They don't even
drops
let the
out.
GM know they're not going to make it, and everyone's waiting around for them, thinking they're going to show up, and then next thing you know, 30 minutes have gone by and no one's there. Yeah.
So if you find yourself doing that, like, ask yourself, why do you keep failing from the game?
Yeah.
I really would love to just pick apart someone's brain about, like, what is the goal? What are you trying to accomplish by saying you're going to commit to something and then not?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I mentioned earlier. Some people probably just feel like they have to be there and don't really want to be there, and that you have to kind of reflect and see if are you having fun in the game, and are you enjoying interacting with the other players and everything, and make a decision. I mean, I don't think any GM is going to be upset if you go to them and say, hey, I'm just not really feeling this game, whatever. I mean, whatever. Maybe next one you will. Like, I don't think that's an issue for any. At least I can't imagine any GM being upset with that if a player came to them with those concerns. So, let's see what else we got here.
So a little bit on the murder hobos would be.
Oh yes, we forgot to actually elaborate on this.
Not caring about your game. That seems to be one of my personal gripes for players. Is when you show up to a game and you just want to knock over dominoes, and you
Yeah.
don't actually care about what happens. If you knock over the dominoes and you want to put them back together, or you're actively engaging in the game, not the grip I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who just don't care about your NPCs and just want to kill your NPCs, steal your NPCs' goods.
Yeah.
Or they have, you don't really care about like what their importance is in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I have conflicting viewpoints on this personally. Like, I have like a big of a tug of war going on internally on this because, like, on one hand, I'm spending all this energy as a GM building out these worlds and these NPCs for my players to play in, but at the same time, the players aren't really there to, know everything there is about my world. They're more there to play Pathfinder or D&D, right? So it's like,
roll some dice.
Yeah, and roll some dice. I mean, a lot of people, maybe they're just there to hang out with their friends, right? They don't even really care what goes on in the game. And I think it's another kind of thing where it goes into the session zero. It's like, are you guys having a serious game where you're really treating this as a role-playing game? Or are you treating this as some time where you and some buddies can get together, have some beers, and shoot the shit while you roll some dice? Like, that's the kind of thing you have to ask yourself as a group. And each individual player has to ask himself as well.
The problem with that problem player is the first response they're going to say is, "It's what my character would do."
The chaotic, stupid rogue.
Yeah, there are ways of handling. So these problem players, there's a way to handle it. If your character is saying it's what your character would do, there are ways about addressing these kind of problems.
So first of all, when someone says it's what my character can do or would do, 99% of the time it is not what their character would do. It's usually a cop-out. It's usually not true that their character would do that. Like murdering a random NPC, your character would not freaking do that. I don't care if they're the evilest person in the game. They're not just going to randomly murder someone for no reason whatsoever and steal their shit out in the broad daylight. Like, at least they premeditate it.
You have to walk people through this sometimes. You have to explain to them, like, you would think about, this is broad daylight. Somebody is going to see you.
Yeah.
You're going to get caught. Like, let's talk about the in-game repercussions about, do you think your party members are going to want to be around you and continue to bring you on an adventure if you kill barmaids and you go around and murder hobos?
No one's going to want to go around traveling with someone who's such a liability like that. Like,
right. Like, when I go to Brest for 8 hours to get my spell slots back, I want to wake up and know my stuff is still here and that my buddy isn't got knifed in the back because you guys had a disagreement. And sometimes you have to slow things down to a crawl and explain to the person, if the person's worth it to keep them at this game, and explain to them, like, look, what is going through your character's mind? Like, oh, you don't care about this person if they live or die? Like, what does that say about you as a person? So that you can, my character is a sociopath. All right, so we go back to the social contract, or we go back to session zero. You probably said in your social contract or session zero, I don't want sociopaths in my game.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody who is mentally ill in my game. And people have two different things here. One, if you're a person with suffering or disabilities, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're talking about a person who goes into the game, a sane person or questionable, goes into the game with this mindset of, I want to be a murderer, I want to be a homicidal maniac. Like, we're playing a fantasy game. Like, what do you think? Like, yeah, those people existed, but those are the bad guys. If you want to run somebody like that, go GM. Go make your own game and have an evil sociopath, and then bring in some players to be the good guys and kill that person, or beat that person and take them to prison. Like, why are you trying to act this kind of fantasy out?
Yeah, I mean, there's also, sometimes it very is a legitimate excuse that is what my character would do, but I would argue, if your character would do that kind of stuff, then they're probably not a good fit for the game you're playing, unless you're playing like an evil campaign or something. So I would actually argue that at that point you should look at removing that character. Yeah, at that point I would look at removing that character from the game and having if the players going to stick around, I would have them roll a new character. Ideally, that character would have never made it in the game to begin with, because you would have, hashed it out with the rest of the players at the beginning of session 0. You would have caught that early, but...
So, I'm going to... A little bit about I've had some problem player, somebody who joined my game. I'm sure you can guess they played a rogue, and they played a cavern elf. And one of my first gripe off the bat was, I asked them, why did you choose a cavern elf? And they said so that they could have dark vision. And that was depressing.
Yeah.
As a GM, I don't know if this works for you guys, John, maybe you can tell me if this works for you, but if you want dark vision that bad, pick any race you want, and you can have dark vision if you need it that badly. I would rather you play a race that you're going to be happy, comfortable in, that you're going to be sociable in, that you're going to work together with the team. I'd rather you play a race like that than just choosing something for its abilities. That's kind of like a red flag for me. For this character, they're playing a rogue, and they wanted dark vision, and I was like, I'm worried. I'm seeing some red flags. So I asked them, what are you going to contribute to the party? And they said, oh, they took a lot of skill feats and performance. And I'm like, okay, good. Sounds like, you're going to bring something to this game. Well, what did the character bring to the game? They had an utter complete death wish. They went straight to the captain of the guard and challenged him to a duel.
Wow.
And wow, I was right. I was just like, okay, so at the end of the session, I have a talk with the person because finding randos online, like, I'm already invested in this player, and the other players are trying to get invested in this person, so I'm going to put forth my best effort to help this problem player. And at the end of the session, I'm like, what did you gain out of challenging the captain of the guard to a duel? And they said, this is what their character would do. And I kind of point out, like, hey, you took away a lot of limelight from the other players who are trying to go on a quest, who are trying to, they have goals that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
You took away from all of that party time trying to handle this one thing. Can you think of a way to what your player would do, what your character would do that involves your group? So I talked to the player. This is that thing you're supposed to do. So then, as we get further down the line, that player decides that there's a trap up ahead, and they want to cut the rock trap in half. We're talking like Indiana Jones style rock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giant boulder. And I'm like, one of the other players in the game tells them, you're like 100-year-old cavern elf. You can't cut a rock in half, right? Like,
I think this was actually the session that I guested.
Were you guessing in this session?
Yeah, I think so.
So I've talked to the player on multiple occasions. I've already got a feel around. So GMs, if you're wondering how to handle this situation, you put your feelers out and ask other players how they feel about this other person. You talk to the person directly, so you go through these steps, and then that character decided they wanted to duel somebody, and they dueled them to the death. And
this is
they
definitely
lost.
the session I guess.
This is the session that you were in. Oh my god, I forget you were in this session. They totally lost the duel. They played against a rogue that was the exact same level, and they just did not play their character that well. It was a really close game.
And they didn't want anyone helping either. I remember that.
No, they wanted the limelight, and I was just like, but why? Like, maybe a one-on-one game is something that you're craving, but it's not.
Yeah.
You want to take away from other players who are enjoying the game. You want them to stare at you. And so this is a personality trait or a behavior that GMs should be looking for. It's like, are they gloating? Are they enjoying the all eyes on them aspect? If they're doing something to help the party, yes, you are succeeding the GM. If they're doing it and everyone's like shifting eyes like, what is going on? Why are we watching this guy go through this? Then it's time to talk to that player. And I still give this player another chance. And what do? They made another rogue with the same name, picking relatively the same feats. And I was just like, no, I do not approve of this. I don't approve of your build. Try again. And sure enough, sometimes the trash will take its life off.
Yeah. They eventually left the game, I remember that. Yeah, I mean that's a rough situation, and I probably personally would have
You
axed
would have
it
booted him
earlier.
so much sooner.
Yeah, I would have booted
You
him
would
much
have given.
sooner.
I give him so many chances.
Yeah, but it's a rough one. And I remember that game you were also having problems finding people to play in as well.
LFG's not what it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, luckily for me, I try to. I have enough people I know that where I can usually get a game together without having to resort to that. But I don't know. It would be tough. I do not look forward to ever going into the LFG world again. But
Well, I mean, once you start rolling a few other games,
yeah,
your inner circle of friends, that's clutch.
yeah,
But then you start trying to have like additional games on top of that,
yeah.
and filling those rosters out can become difficult.
Yeah, I'm looking at maybe starting bringing Pathfinder 2 to the local comic book store that recently reopened. They only have 5e, and I think there's one Pathfinder 1e game going right now. So I might be entering that world sooner than I think. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I did realize we're almost at time now, so I think we'll probably do some closing thoughts here. And I do realize that I forgot to at the beginning mention that if you like these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. They will be up on YouTube within the next couple days after after we close out, and also like us on Twitch. We're not affiliate yet, so we can't like or partner or anything, so you can't like subscribe to us or anything there. So that's fine. Um, we post a lot of stuff on Twitter. We post a lot of stuff on Mastodon. We'll probably be slowing down on Mastodon. The user base just isn't quite there yet. We started to post more on Instagram. All of that will have links to all of the social medias down in the um, description box on YouTube, and also we'll put them in the bio. I believe they're already in the bio on Twitch if you need them. There's also a link tree link that has all of that information in it. We haven't decided what our next show is going to be on next week, but we'll announce that as soon as we do. What was that?
So we gotta check the calendar.
Yeah, I think this is the last one we had on the calendar. So we'll have to do some more brainstorming there.
This is the last of the month, so I don't think we had any more on the calendar. So we'll pop up the next 4. We'll probably roll randomly.
I did find some potential art for the deity or religion, I guess, that Jack wrote up. So I'll be releasing that on the website here in the next few days as well. And I'm still working on Dancer. I know I've been talking about it a long time. It's coming though, I promise. We got the art and everything. I'm just, like I said, finishing off those feats and hopefully get some play testing in on it soon before we release it, but we'll see. We want to hope to start doing some more less builds and stuff and more just general blog posts for things we do as GMs and things like that. Release them on our website, so hopefully that can kind of fill out the content a bit. But we will be also doing Pathfinder 2e and maybe some Starfinder builds once we get more experience with that system. So that kind of in video games, it's common for MMORPGs people to release here's a build for this class to do this kind of thing, and we want to kind of experiment with that approach for Pathfinder 2e builds. Here's a build you can take from here's how you play at level 1, here's how you play at level 5, 10, 15, 20, and then kind of adjust from there. So let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see us do, release videos, content, blog posts, whatever. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, and we'll try to knock those out. Do you have any closing thoughts before we disperse, Jack?
So don't forget to check us out on the Reddit. We have the Art of the Game Mastery on Reddit. I've been posting some of these topics, so when you guys see them, suggest you guys join the community so you guys get to put your input in there first. If you like hearing us call you out, make a shout out to you guys, reference you, then don't be shy. Get into there on those comments. There's a lot of people on there who are having some good information. I know a lot of times where we struggle for coming up with a build idea or rules. We want to ask a community. So use those communities. They are a tool for us to kind of,
Yeah, the big one we use is the Pathfinder 2e subreddit, so r/Pathfinder 2e.
I'd like to cover problem dice, Ilos, but I think there was who's that does the animation, the deck of spell cards guy. Who is that guy?
I don't recall this person.
Oh, John, I'll have to show you that. He's got a great video. I'll have to show you that one.
Maybe we'll do an IG short or a YouTube short once we're allowed to do that on problem dice. Real quick, 1 or 2 minute. How to handle problem dice. You know, do you do the freezer trick? Do you do the microwave trick? You know, what's your poison there?
Do you sacrifice your dice when they roll poorly?
Yeah, that'd be a fun short. But, all right, guys.
So,
well, and gals, we will see you next week, hopefully. Till next time, happy gaming.